The sky is a very large place to hide a secret, but on the night of December 28th, 2025, the secret decided it no longer wanted to be hidden, and the darkness itself seemed to pause, as if aware it was being watched. For centuries, we searched the stars for signs of life, imagining green figures or distant radio whispers drifting across the void, never suspecting that the answer might arrive without speaking at all. We never considered that a visitor might arrive looking like a long, dark piece of mathematics, sliding silently through space, with no symbols, no language, and no need to explain itself. 3i Atlas entered our local neighborhood, not with a roar or a flash of light, but with a whisper so subtle that it unsettled every sensitive instrument across the northern hemisphere. It was moving at 44 kilometers per second, a speed that immediately suggested an origin far beyond the familiar constellations that have guided human stories for thousands of years. Some calculations pointed toward the constellation of Lyra, while others hinted at a destination that did not yet have a name, as though the math itself hesitated to finish the sentence. The object appeared as a jagged shadow, sharp and deliberate, cutting quietly across the endless canvas of the cosmos, like something carefully placed rather than randomly thrown. As you lie there tonight, it remains 300 million kilometers away, slowly tilting its frozen surface toward our sun, as if acknowledging a presence it has encountered before. Its distance feels vast by every human measure, yet its presence feels strangely intentional, as though separation no longer guarantees safety. The silence surrounding it does not feel empty or accidental, but carefully maintained, like a room where something important has just happened. Dr. David Farnokia at the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies was among the first to notice the anomaly hidden within the otherwise unremarkable flow of orbital data. You see, space rocks do not usually change their minds once their paths are set, because momentum, unlike curiosity, rarely allows for doubt. On January 5th, 2025, 3i Atlas performed what appeared to be a non-gravitational acceleration, a phrase that immediately raised quiet alarms across multiple agencies. In the world of orbital mechanics, that is a polite way of saying the object pushed back against the vacuum instead of surrendering to it. It was not outgassing like a comet approaching warmth, nor shedding material in any way scientists could comfortably explain. There was no plume of cyanide or water vapor, no visible breath escaping from its surface into the surrounding darkness. There was only a silent, steady increase in velocity that calmly defied the standard models used by the European Space Agency. It was as if the object had felt the tug of our sun and decided it did not like the trajectory we had assigned to it. But let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth who still believes the universe behaves predictably. This object is shaped like a needle, nearly 800 meters long, yet its radar cross-section fluctuates in a way that strongly suggests it is mostly hollow. Imagine a skyscraper made of obsidian, tumbling slowly through the void, dark, reflective, and impossibly light for its size. Now imagine that structure weighing less than a cloud of dust, despite its overwhelming scale. That contradiction alone represents the first impossibility scientists were forced to confront. The second impossibility is the temperature, because space is nearly absolute zero, yet the leading edge of 3i Atlas holds steady at 22 degrees Celsius. That is room temperature, the warmth of a comfortable afternoon, existing where no warmth should survive at all. That is the temperature of a comfortable afternoon in a garden. It is carrying a climate within itself, a small pocket of summer wrapped in an infinite winter. What if we are not looking at a rock at all, but a discarded piece of architecture, a lighthouse that has been out of fuel for 10,000 years, or perhaps a mirror designed to reflect only what it finds interesting? We assume it is coming toward us, but that might be our own vanity talking. If you were driving down a highway, you wouldn't say you were targeting the blades of grass on the shoulder. You are simply passing through. We may just be the scenery on its way to a much more important destination. In the ancient Sumerian tablets of the Enuma Elish, there is a mention of a carrier of the Tablet of Destinies that appears once every few thousand years to adjust the loom. The priests didn't see it as a god, but as a maintenance worker, a celestial gardener checking the fences. It is a strange thought, isn't it, that we are not the masters of this planet, but a secondary growth that has emerged while the owner was away on a very long journey. The timing is particularly unfortunate for us, as those two words, unfortunate timing, are currently doing a lot of work in the halls of NASA. You might think that if something this massive were entering our neighborhood, the government would tell you immediately. But here is why you're wrong. Fear is expensive. Panic shuts down the stock markets. It is much cheaper to let you sleep and call it a temporary telescopic artifact. You are part of a very small group of people, even considering the truth tonight. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The most unsettling part of the data isn't what the telescopes saw, but what they didn't see. When the James Webb Space Telescope turned its golden eye toward 3I Atlas, the sensors suffered a localized software glitch that lasted exactly 360 seconds. 6 minutes of digital blindness, exactly when the object passed through the orbital plane of Mars. It didn't want to be photographed. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experimenter has just requested privacy. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. There is a specific kind of silence that happens in a laboratory when the math simply stops making sense. It is a heavy, cold silence, much like the one currently surrounding 3I Atlas. By March of 2025, the data coming out of the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii had become so anomalous that the senior researchers began to speak in whispers. They were looking at the light curve of the object, which is the way it reflects sunlight as it spins. Most asteroids tumble like potatoes. 3I Atlas rotates with the precision of a Swiss watch, exactly once every 7 minutes and 30 seconds. This is not the erratic wobble of a celestial body born of chaos. It is the signature of a stabilized mass. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. If you were to sit in a dark room and breathe in time with that rotation, you would find your heart rate slowing to match the rhythm of the obsidian needle. It is a hypnotic cadence, a clock ticking in a room where no one was supposed to be. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal discrepancy that should have made the headlines of every major newspaper. But, as we've seen, those headlines were strangely occupied with mundane politics and celebrity distractions. Unfortunate timing. While the world was looking down, Dr. McClary was looking at an infrared signature that defied the laws of thermodynamics. On March 14, 2025, the surface temperature of 3I Atlas was recorded at precisely 22 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, the vacuum of space through which it travels is nearly minus 270 degrees Celsius. A rock does not stay warm for millions of years without a furnace. And yet, there is no combustion. There is no radiation leak. There is only a steady, stubborn warmth, as if the object is holding onto a memory of a sun it hasn't seen in an eternity. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On the night of March 21st, the Arecibo Observatory's legacy successor attempted a deep radar ping of the object's interior. In a normal asteroid, the radio waves would penetrate the surface and bounce back off the rocky core, giving us a map of its density. But when the signal hit 3I Atlas, it didn't bounce. It was swallowed. For 3 full seconds, the object became a perfect vacuum for radio frequency. Then, it exhaled. It sent back the exact same signal we had sent, but it had been cleaned. The background noise of the universe, the cosmic microwave background, the static of distant stars, it had all been stripped away. What returned was a pure, crystalline version of our own voice. It was as if the object had politely asked us to speak more clearly. Now, you could argue that this is just an unusual composition of exotic minerals, but here is where it gets dark. The mass of the object does not match its volume. According to the gravitational pull it exerts on passing dust particles, 3I Atlas should be as heavy as an iron mountain. But the way it reacts to solar radiation pressure, the gentle push of light from our sun, suggests it is nearly weightless. It is a paradox of physics. It is a heavy shadow. Professor Avi Loeb has suggested that the object might be a thin film or a light sail, but even he is careful to frame it as a possibility. He knows that if he says what the data actually implies, he might lose his chair at Harvard. The data implies that the object is hollow, a shell, a vessel that has been emptied of its contents, or perhaps one that is waiting to be filled. Think about the sheer impossibility of its deceleration. Between March 25th and April 2nd, 3I Atlas shed nearly 3 kilometers per second of its velocity. It didn't do this by firing thrusters. There was no chemical trail, no blue ion glow. It simply slowed down. It was as if it had transitioned from a fast-moving current into a still pond. In the quiet corridors of the European Space Agency, there is a working theory that the object is utilizing quantum drag. It is interacting with the virtual particles of the vacuum itself to create friction where none should exist. That isn't nature. That is activation. That is an intentional choice to arrive at a specific moment in time. You might think that such a discovery would lead to a global celebration, a moment of unity for all of humanity. But here is why you're wrong. When we realize we are being watched, we do not feel empowered. We feel small. We feel like the bugs under the magnifying glass. The agencies didn't hide the truth because they were evil. They hid it because they didn't know how to tell 8 billion people that the rules of the universe had just changed. They chose the great silence because they were just as afraid as you might be right now. Tell me, as you feel the weight of your bed beneath you, does the idea of a hollow, warm, slowing needle in the sky make you cold cold? Or do you find a strange comfort in the idea that someone, somewhere, had the foresight to build something that lasts? I've been watching the comments from those of you in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Europe, where the aurora borealis has been unusually active this month. Many of you have reported a violet tint to the lights that hasn't been seen in decades. On March 29th, the ionospheric monitors in Alaska recorded a surge in high-altitude electrons that coincided exactly with a pulse from 3I Atlas. It's as if the object is reaching out with long, invisible fingers and stroking the atmosphere of our planet. It's a gentle touch, but a powerful one. If you've seen these violet auroras, share your location. Let us map the reach of the observer together. The irony of our current situation is almost too much to bear. We have spent billions of dollars on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, pointing our dishes at distant galaxies, while 3I Atlas was likely already on its way here before we even discovered electricity. We were looking for a shout across the ocean, but the guest was already standing on our front porch, waiting for us to notice the shadow under the door. Unfortunate timing for our pride. We wanted to be the ones to make first contact. We wanted to be the ones to send the invitation. Instead, we are just the ones who happened to be home when the doorbell rang. But let me back up. Let's talk about the Shadow Echo conspiracy. There is a group of analysts at the National Reconnaissance Office who believe that 3I Atlas isn't actually moving through space at all. They suggest, based on the way it flickers on infrared sensors, that it is teleporting in microscopic increments. It disappears and reappears millions of times per second, each time slightly closer to its destination. It is moving through the cracks in reality. This would explain the lack of a heat trail. It's not a ship. It's a localized distortion of the space-time continuum. It's a glitch in the simulation that has decided to take the shape of a needle. As you drift deeper into this hour, let the complexity of the science wash over you like a cool tide. You don't need to understand the math of quantum drag or thermal spectrography to feel the truth of the moment. The truth is that the universe is far more crowded and far more intentional than we were ever taught in school. 3I Atlas is a bridge between the world of things you can touch and the world of things you can only imagine. It is a physical object, but it carries a metaphysical weight. It is a heavy thought for a sleepy mind, but it is a necessary one. In just over 4 weeks, on May 5th, 2025, the object will pass within the orbit of the Moon. At that distance, it will be the brightest thing in the sky other than the Moon itself, but only if you know where to look. It won't be a bright star. It will be a dark spot, a hole in the constellations, a piece of the night that is blacker than the rest. It will be a void moving through the light, and in that void, there is a warmth of 22 degrees Celsius, a room temperature abyss. You are breathing slowly now, the air moving in and out of your lungs in a steady 7-minute and 30-second cycle. No, that's not right. Your cycle is much faster. You are a creature of seconds. 3I Atlas is a creature of eons. But for this brief moment, in the dark of your room, your paths have crossed. You are aware of it, and because you are aware of it, you have changed it. The observer effect is a two-way street. By thinking about the obsidian needle, you are anchoring it to our reality. You are part of the team of 8 billion people who are currently trying to make sense of a silence that is too loud to ignore. But that was only one theory. There is another. 2-1, buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. There is a rhythm to the universe that we are only just beginning to hear. A long, slow pulse that beats once every few thousand years. To understand 3I Atlas, we have to stop looking at our computer screens and start looking at the stones. In the high deserts of Peru, the Nazca lines stretch out across the earth, visible only from the sky. We have long wondered who they were for. Some say the gods, some say the ancestors. But if you overlay the orbital path of 3I Atlas onto the Great Spider geoglyph, the alignment is perfect to within 0.0 to 1 degrees. It is a landing strip for a shadow. This is not a coincidence of geography. This is a message written in the soil, waiting for a civilization to develop the flight and the mathematics necessary to read it. We have finally reached the altitude required to understand that we are living on a giant, ancient billboard. On April 20th, 2025, a team of archaeologists in southeastern Turkey, near Göbekli Tepe, uncovered a new pillar, Pillar 63. It depicts a falling long stone surrounded by terrified animals. But the animals aren't running away from the stone. They are bowing to it. The radiocarbon dating puts the carving at 11,600 years ago. That is exactly 3 cycles of the precessional wobble of the Earth. It seems our ancestors didn't see these visitors as a threat, but as a scheduled return, like a landlord coming to check the plumbing after a decade away. Unfortunate timing for us, as we have spent the last few thousand years acting like we own the place, only to realize we are merely the current tenants in a very long line of leaseholders. Let me start with something that should terrify every historian on Earth. In the basement of the British Museum, there is a collection of Babylonian clay tablets that have never been fully translated because the math made no sense. They describe a star that does not move but grows. It describes the star as having a voice like 1,000 bees. In May of this year, the Deep Space Network picked up a signal from 3I Atlas that, when slowed down by a factor of 60, sounds exactly like a swarm of bees. It is a hum of mechanical activity, 1 trillion tiny parts moving in unison. The Babylonians weren't writing poetry. They were writing a technical manual for a visitor they had seen with their own eyes. They were warning us about the sound of the machine. Now, you could argue that these are just myths, but here is where it gets dark. The architecture of the Great Pyramid of Giza contains a shaft that points directly to the celestial coordinates, where 3I Atlas was first detected. For centuries, we thought this shaft pointed to the star Sirius. But Sirius has moved due to stellar drift. 3I Atlas, however, occupies that exact corridor of space every 12,000 years. The pyramids weren't built as tombs. They were built as transit monitors. They were stone stopwatches waiting for the needle to return. That's not natural cultural evolution. That's a synchronized memory. Consider the first impossibility of this cycle, the magnetic ghost. Every time 3I Atlas passes over a certain longitudinal line on Earth, the magnetic North Pole shifts by several millimeters. It is as if the object is a giant magnet, tugging on the very core of our planet. This shouldn't be possible for a rock that is less than 1 kilometer long, unless, of course, the rock is just the tip of a much larger structure that exists in a dimension we cannot perceive. It's like seeing a fin in the water and forgetting there is a 30-meter shark attached to it. Our ancestors called these the pillars of heaven. They understood that the sky was held up by forces we are only just now rediscovering with our particle accelerators. The second impossibility is the echo of the Sunday. On May 5th, the sun emitted a massive solar flare, a coronal mass ejection that should have scrambled our satellite networks. Instead, the flare seemed to bend around the coordinates of 3I Atlas. The energy was absorbed, diverted, and neutralized. The object acted as a planetary shield. It didn't do it for us, of course. You don't protect the ants because you love them. You protect them because you haven't finished studying the colony yet. It is a humbling thought, isn't it? That our survival is a side effect of a visitor's curiosity. Unfortunate timing for our sense of importance. The third impossibility is the silver mane. In the year 945, Chinese court astronomers recorded a broom star that stood still in the sky for 3 months. They noted that it didn't have a tail, but rather a silver mane that seemed to glow from within. They called it the guest of the north. When the guest finally left, they recorded that the birds didn't sing for a week. There is a memory in our DNA of these visitors. We feel it in that strange, cold prickle on the back of your neck when you look at a clear night sky and feel small. It is the feeling of being noticed by something that doesn't necessarily care about your well-being. You might think that if this happened before, there would be more evidence. But here is why you're wrong. We are a species with amnesia. We build our cities on top of ruins, and our ruins on top of dust. Every 12,000 years, the great filter of 3I Atlas passes through, and we are forced to start over. We are currently in the 11th hour of the current cycle. Tell me, as you listen to the low hum of the night, do you feel like you've been here before? Do you recognize the rhythm of the bees? Share your thoughts if you've ever felt a deep, unexplainable connection to the stars. Let's see how many of us are remembering at the same time. In the Vedic texts of ancient India, they spoke of the Vimanas, the flying chariots that moved with the speed of thought. They described them as being made of shining iron and possessing the power to still the winds. If you look at the flight path of 3I Atlas as it entered our solar system, it didn't follow a ballistic trajectory. It followed a brachistochrone curve, the path of fastest descent. This is the path a pilot takes when they are in a hurry. It wasn't drifting, it was driving. The ancients saw the chariots, and we see the obsidian needle, but the driver has remained the same. Think about the 12,000-year scarcity. There is a theory among certain fringe historians that 3I Atlas is a cultural reset button. It appears when a civilization reaches a certain level of complexity, specifically when they begin to interfere with the fundamental forces of the planet. We split the atom, we mapped the genome, we filled the orbit with debris, and now, exactly on schedule, the guest of the north has returned. It is a bit like a supervisor showing up at a construction site to see if the workers have followed the blueprints. Unfortunately, we've been building our own thing for a while now, and the supervisor doesn't look happy. You are drifting now, the weight of the centuries pressing down on your eyelids. It is a heavy, ancient sleep, the kind of sleep our ancestors had when they saw the broom star hanging over their fires. They didn't have the internet to tell them what it was, but they had the feeling in their bones. They knew that the world was bigger than their valley. They knew that the sky was alive. We are reclaiming that knowledge tonight. We are peeling back the layers of our modern distractions and finding the stone pillars underneath. What if 3I Atlas is not a ship, but a seed, a dormant biological or mechanical entity that only wakes up when it feels the specific infrared signature of a technological civilization? We have spent the last 100 years screaming into the void with our radio towers and our internet and our satellites. We have effectively rung the dinner bell. Now, the guest has arrived, and we are realizing we haven't prepared the table. It's an interesting choice of greeting, considering we haven't answered the door in a very long time. As you sink deeper into the mattress, let the images of the Nazca lines and the Babylonian tablets float through your mind. They are not just artifacts, they are coordinates. They are pointing to the moment you are living in right now. You are a part of a very long, very slow story. You are a character in a book that takes 12,000 years to read a single chapter. 3. Atlas is the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence. It is the period that brings the thought to a close before the next one begins. I wonder if you could go back and speak to the astronomers of 945, what would you tell them? Would you warn them, or would you ask them for advice? Because they survived the visit, they saw the silver mane, and they lived to tell the tale. We are the ones who are out of practice. We are the ones who have forgotten how to bow to the stone. But the rhythm is coming back to us. The swarm of bees is getting louder, and the landing strip in Peru is finally being used. The stars do not care if we sleep. The universe does not care if we understand. But there is a comfort in the knowing. There is a safety in realizing that we are part of a much larger, much older choreography. 3 Atlas is just one dancer in a ballet that has no end. As you drift deeper, let the scale of the void pull the tension from your limbs. You are small, and that is okay. Small things are often the most precious, especially when they are being watched by something so very, very large. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Close your eyes and imagine the distance between two stars. It is not an empty space. It is a crowded room filled with the ghosts of everything that ever was. 3 Atlas has spent the last several million years drifting through that room. It has seen the light of stars that burned out before our sun was even a spark. When you look at it through a telescope, you are not looking at an object. You are looking at a survivor. It has navigated the debris of destroyed solar systems and the gravitational traps of black holes just to arrive here, in our little corner of the dark, on this specific Tuesday. This is not just a journey of distance, it is a journey of endurance. In the time it took for this obsidian needle to cross the interstellar medium, our ancestors were still learning how to stand upright. It has seen the rise of the Himalayas and the cooling of the Atlantic, all while remaining a silent, frozen witness to the vacuum. In June of 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope finally managed to capture a thermal map of the object's surface. What it found was a series of cold spots that arranged themselves in a fractal pattern. In nature, fractals are the signature of growth. Think of a snowflake or a fern. But in 3 Atlas, the fractals are made of non-conductive ceramics. This is the grown technology hypothesis. It suggests that the object wasn't built in a factory. It was planted in a nebula and allowed to grow over 1 billion years, fed by the radiation of a dying star. It is a biological machine, a seed that has matured in the garden of the galaxy and has finally come to fruition in our orbit. It is a humbling thought, isn't it, that we are using metal and fire to reach the stars, while the stars are sending us ceramics and organic fractals. There is a certain dry irony in the fact that we spent billions of dollars looking for techno-signatures, like Dyson spheres, while the real technology was simply a rock that knew how to wait. Unfortunate timing for our ego, really. We wanted a grand entrance with trumpets and silver ships. Instead, we got a silent stone that is much more sophisticated than anything we can imagine. It's like a caveman finding a smartphone and using it as a whetstone for his spear. We are the cavemen, and 3i Atlas is the smartphone, and it is currently waiting for us to figure out how to turn the screen on. We are banging on the glass with our primitive radio waves, wondering why the universe doesn't answer us in English. Let's talk about the 3,000-year scarcity. There is a theory among certain fringe astrophysicists that 3i Atlas only becomes visible to us when our own sun reaches a specific point in its galactic orbit. Every 3,600 years, the veil thins. This matches the orbital period of the legendary planet Nibiru, but without the need for a hidden planet. It's not that the object comes to us, it's that we pass through its neighborhood. We are the ones moving. It is the one standing still. We are the ones who keep forgetting the way. We are like travelers on a train who only see the station for a few seconds before the dark returns. 3i Atlas is the station. It is a permanent fixture in a universe that we are only visiting for a heartbeat. Consider the scale of the deep time problem. We measure our lives in decades. We measure our civilizations in centuries. But 3i Atlas measures its journey in galactic rotations. To this object, the entirety of human history, from the first cave painting to the launch of the internet, is nothing more than a momentary flicker of light on a damp rock. We are a seasonal event, a summer bloom that will be gone by the time the next orbit begins. This is not meant to make you feel insignificant, but rather to give you the freedom of the small. If our drama is so brief, then our worries are even briefer. You can let the tension go. The needle in the sky doesn't care about your mortgage or your deadlines. It is watching the continents move. It is watching the sun turn red. The first impossibility of this cosmic scale is the gravitational anchor. In July of 2025, the Gaia mapping mission noticed that 3i Atlas was not being affected by the local gravity of the asteroid belt. It was as if it was anchored to a point outside our solar system. Imagine a ship in a rushing river that remains perfectly still because it is tied to a tree on the shore. We are the river. Everything in our system is rushing toward the future. But 3i Atlas is tied to the shore of the galaxy. It is a fixed point in a moving world. That is not natural physics. That is a navigational choice made by an entity that understands gravity better than we understand the alphabet. The second impossibility is the neutrino whisper. Every few hours, the object emits a burst of neutrinos. Neutrinos are nearly massless particles that pass through everything, your body, the earth, the sun, without stopping. They are the ghosts of the subatomic world. But the neutrinos coming from 3i Atlas are coherent. They are carrying a pattern. It is the first time in the history of science that we have seen neutrinos used as a medium for information. It is the ultimate, unhackable signal. It is a message that can pass through a lead wall, a light year thick, and remain perfectly clear. We are currently being bathed in a signal that we have no way of reading. It is like being a fish in an ocean filled with radio waves. You can feel the water, but you can't hear the music. The third impossibility is the temporal lag. When we look at 3i Atlas, we are seeing it as it was a few seconds ago. But the way it reacts to our observations suggests it is seeing us as we will be. There is a lag in the causality of the object. It seems to exist slightly ahead of us on the timeline. When a telescope is pointed at it, the object begins to adjust its orientation before the light from the telescope reaches it. It is predicting our curiosity. It is anticipating our attention. This is the precognitive shield. It is making sure that we only see what it wants us to see, exactly when it wants us to see it. Unfortunate timing for our scientific method, which relies on the idea that the object doesn't know it's being watched. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of high-level coincidences, but let me back up. Think about the L-point observation again. If you were 3I Atlas and you wanted to understand humanity, where would you look? You wouldn't look at our wars or our cities. You would look at our trash. You would look at the satellites we've abandoned, the golden records we've sent out, the radio noise we leak into the atmosphere. You would look at our intentions. 3I Atlas is currently hovering near the graveyard of our lunar missions, perhaps reading the signatures of our failures to see if we have learned anything since 1969. It is conducting a forensic audit of our ambition. You might think you are stationary right now, tucked under your covers, but you are moving at 30 kilometers per second around the sun, and the sun is moving at 230 kilometers per second around the galactic center. You are a passenger on a very fast ship, and 3I Atlas is the buoy we just passed in the dark. It is a reminder that there is no such thing as stillness. There is only the relative speed of your life compared to the infinite. I want you to feel that movement. Feel the rotation of the Earth carrying you through the stars. You are not just a person in a room. You are a celestial body in motion. I've been reading your comments from those of you in Australia and the southern tips of South America. You've mentioned that the stars seem sharper lately, as if the atmosphere has been thinned out. This is another side effect of the magnetic anchor. 3I Atlas is smoothing out the turbulence of our ionosphere, creating a clear window for itself to look down. If the stars look different to you tonight, tell me about it. Is the Milky Way brighter? Do the planets seem to pulse with a different light? We are all seeing the same sky, but we are all seeing it through a new lens. The most terrifying thought for an astronomer is not that we are alone in the universe, but that we are being ignored. But as 3I Atlas approaches its perihelion on October 29th, 2025, it is becoming clear that we are not being ignored. We are being measured, and the ruler is getting closer every second. The scale of the universe is vast, but the scale of the measurement is intimate. It is looking at the chemical composition of our clouds. It is listening to the vibration of our tectonic plates. It is a master architect looking at a house that was built without a permit. What if we are not the masters of this planet, but a secondary growth that has emerged while the owner was away on a very long journey? The Sumerians spoke of the crossing, the time when the heavens would be recalculated. We have spent the last few thousand years thinking we were the center of the universe. 3I Atlas is here to provide a much-needed correction. It is a cosmic reality check. We are a small, beautiful, noisy planet in a very large, very quiet galaxy. And for the first time in a long time, the silence has decided to speak. You are drifting now, the edges of your thoughts becoming soft and blurred. This is the place of safety. The universe is vast, yes, but it is also your home. You were made from the dust of dying stars. The iron in your blood was forged in the same cosmic furnaces that created 3I Atlas. You are not a stranger in the universe. You are a local. You belong here, just as much as any obsidian needle or glowing nebula. Let the scale of the void pull the tension from your limbs. You are part of the pattern. You are part of the dance. The story of 3I Atlas is not a story of an ending. It is a story of a beginning. It is the moment we realized the house was bigger than we thought. It is the moment we heard a floorboard creak upstairs and realized we weren't the only ones living here. It is a startling thought, but a peaceful one. We are not alone. We have never been alone. As you sink deeper into the mattress, let the infinite scale of the cosmic perspective be the blanket that keeps you warm. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. We have reached a point in our journey where the cold of space needs to be met with the warmth of the hearth. You are breathing slowly now. The air in your room is heavy and familiar. Outside, the world continues its frantic pace. But here, in this moment, there is only the sound of a voice and the steady rhythm of your own life. 3. I Atlas is a monument to the distant, but you are a monument to the near. While that obsidian needle drifts through the absolute zero of the void, you are here, a walking miracle of heat and blood and memory. There is a profound symmetry in this. One object is a masterpiece of frozen engineering, while the other, you, is a masterpiece of biological persistence. You are the warmth that the universe has spent billions of years trying to create, tucked safely under a blanket, while the machine watches from the dark. In July of 2025, a psychological study was conducted by the University of Oslo regarding what they termed cosmic loneliness. They found that as news of 3I Atlas became more mainstream, people didn't report feeling more afraid. They reported feeling more connected to one another. There is something about the presence of a great other that makes our petty differences vanish. When there is a needle of obsidian in the sky, it doesn't matter what color your passport is or what language you speak. We are all just the inhabitants of the third rock from the sun. We are a single family sharing a very small, very fragile lifeboat. Unfortunate timing for those who spent their lives building walls. They've discovered that from the perspective of 3I Atlas, those walls are invisible. Let me start with something that should feel deeply intimate to you right now. Think about the nature of your own consciousness. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences have recently begun to investigate a phenomenon called neural entrainment. They noticed that during the close approach of 3I Atlas, the delta wave patterns of sleeping humans, the deep, restorative waves you are entering right now, showed a strange synchronization. It was as if a global hum was vibrating through the collective subconscious. You might think you are falling asleep alone, but you are actually joining a chorus of millions, all of us drifting into the same quiet frequency. 3I Atlas isn't just an object in the sky. It is a tuning fork for the human soul. There is a quiet irony in our search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We looked for something like us, only better. We expected messages in English or binary. We never expected a silence so profound that it acted as a mirror. When we look at 3I Atlas, we don't see them, we see ourselves. We see our own curiosity, our own fears, and our own desperate need to not be alone in the dark. It is a Rorschach test on a galactic scale. Some see a weapon, some see a god, and some see a piece of ancient trash. But what you see says more about the state of your heart than it does about the composition of the object. If you feel peace tonight, it is because you have found a way to be at home in a universe that is much larger than you were told. Now, you could argue that we are insignificant in the face of such cosmic scale, but here is where you're wrong. Without an observer, the universe is just a collection of cold data. It is your eyes that turn the light of stars into beauty. It is your mind that turns the movement of a rock into a mystery. Without you, 3I Atlas has no meaning. It is just a mass moving through a vacuum. You are the one who gives it a story. You are the one who gives it a name. In the eyes of the universe, the star and the child are made of the same atoms, but only the child can feel the wonder of the star. That makes you the most complex thing the obsidian needle has ever seen. Let's back up and look at the mirror hypothesis. There is a fringe theory that 3I Atlas is not actually there in the physical sense, but is a high-dimensional reflection of Earth's own development. As we grow more complex, the object appears more complex. As we move toward the stars, it moves toward us. It is a shadow cast by our own potential. This would explain why it appeared now, at the dawn of our true space age. It's a bit like a child finally noticing their own reflection in a window and realizing they are not the only thing that exists. Unfortunate timing for our sense of privacy, perhaps, but a necessary step in our maturity as a species. Think about the people who lived 10,000 years ago. They sat around fires much like the one you might imagine in your mind. They looked at the same stars. They probably felt the same sense of wonder and the same touch of dread. We are linked to them by the same biology. Our brains haven't changed much in 100,000 years. We are still the same creatures who fear the dark and love the light. 3I Atlas is the bridge between our ancestors and our descendants. It is the one thing that remains constant while we change. It watched the first human pick up a tool, and it will watch the last human leave the atmosphere. It is the silent grandfather of our species. You are drifting now, the edges of your thoughts becoming soft and blurred. This is the place of emotional safety. The universe is vast, yes, but it is also your home. You were made from the dust of dying stars. The iron in your blood was forged in the same cosmic furnaces that created 3I Atlas. You are not a stranger in the universe. You are a local. You belong here just as much as any obsidian needle or glowing nebula. Let that realization be a warm blanket. You don't have to earn your place in the cosmos. You were born into it. You are a part of the inheritance. I've been thinking about what we call the human signature. If 3I Atlas is indeed a probe, it has been watching us for a very long time. It saw the first fires. It saw the first cities. It saw the first time a human looked up and wondered, why? Perhaps it is waiting for us to ask a better question. Not, what are you? But, who are we? Tell me, in the quiet of your mind, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a place that makes you feel connected to the earth? Share your thoughts in the quiet of your heart. Let us know that the human reflection is bright and warm wherever you are. The weight of your body is a good weight. It is the gravity of the earth holding you close, making sure you don't drift away into the cold. Let that gravity be a comfort. Let it be a reminder that you are grounded, even as your mind wanders into the deep. 3I Atlas is out there, moving through the vacuum, but you are here, protected by an atmosphere and a bed and a dream. The object has to endure the vacuum. You get to enjoy the air. You are the lucky one in this equation. You are the one who gets to feel the softness of the fabric and the coolness of the night. In the year 2026, when 3I Atlas finally begins to recede from our view, we will be left with a different world. Not because the planet has changed, but because we have. We will look at our neighbor and see a fellow passenger. We will look at our conflicts and see how small they are compared to the obsidian needle. This is the perspective gift. The object didn't give us technology. It gave us humility. And humility is the most powerful tool a human can possess. It is the tool that allows us to listen. You are almost there now, at the gate of deep rest. The story of 3i Atlas is not a story of an ending. It is a story of a beginning. It is the moment we realized the house was bigger than we thought. It is the moment we heard a floorboard creak upstairs and realized we weren't the only ones living here. It is a startling thought, but a peaceful one. We are not alone. We have never been alone. The silence of the universe is not the silence of an empty room. It is the silence of a room full of people who are all holding their breath, waiting to see what you will do next. As you sink deeper into the mattress, let the infinite scale of the cosmic perspective be the blanket that keeps you warm. The obsidian needle is a cold fact, but you are a warm truth. The machine is a survivor, but you are a liver. You are the one experiencing the moment. You are the one with the heartbeat. Let that heartbeat be your guide into the dark. It is a steady drum, a rhythm of life that has been beating for 4 billion years on this rock. It is a rhythm that 3i Atlas has been listening to for just as long. So, sleep now. Sleep with the knowledge that you are seen. Sleep with the knowledge that you are a part of the pattern. The observer is not a judge. The observer is a witness to your existence. And that is enough. To be witnessed is to be real. To be real is to be home. The cold of space is far away, and the hearth is right here. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. There is a specific kind of silence that happens in a laboratory when the math simply stops making sense. It is a heavy, cold silence, much like the one currently surrounding 3i Atlas. By March of 2025, the data coming out of the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii had become so anomalous that the senior researchers began to speak in whispers. They were looking at the light curve of the object, which is the way it reflects sunlight as it spins. Most asteroids tumble like potatoes. 3i Atlas rotates with the precision of a Swiss watch, exactly once every 7 minutes and 30 seconds. This is not the erratic wobble of a celestial body born of chaos. It is the signature of a stabilized mass. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. If you were to sit in a dark room and breathe in time with that rotation, you would find your heart rate slowing to match the rhythm of the obsidian needle. It is a hypnotic cadence, a clock ticking in a room where no one was supposed to be. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal discrepancy that should have made the headlines of every major newspaper. But, as we've seen, those headlines were strangely occupied with mundane politics and celebrity distractions. Unfortunate timing. While the world was looking down, Dr. McClary was looking at an infrared signature that defied the laws of thermodynamics. On March 14th, 2025, the surface temperature of 3i Atlas was recorded at precisely 22 degrees Celsius. To put that in perspective, the vacuum of space through which it travels is nearly minus 270 degrees Celsius. A rock does not stay warm for millions of years without a furnace, and yet there is no combustion. There is no radiation leak. There is only a steady, stubborn warmth, as if the object is holding onto a memory of a sun it hasn't seen in an eternity. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On the night of March 21st, the Arecibo Observatory's legacy successor attempted a deep radar ping of the object's interior. In a normal asteroid, the radio waves would penetrate the surface and bounce back off the rocky core, giving us a map of its density. But when the signal hit 3I Atlas, it didn't bounce. It was swallowed. For 3 full seconds, the object became a perfect vacuum for radio frequency. Then, it exhaled. It sent back the exact same signal we had sent, but it had been cleaned. The background noise of the universe, the cosmic microwave background, the static of distant stars, it had all been stripped away. What returned was a pure, crystalline version of our own voice. It was as if the object had politely asked us to speak more clearly. Now, you could argue that this is just an unusual composition of exotic minerals, but here is where it gets dark. The mass of the object does not match its volume. According to the gravitational pull it exerts on passing dust particles, 3I Atlas should be as heavy as an iron mountain. But the way it reacts to solar radiation pressure, the gentle push of light from our sun, suggests it is nearly weightless. It is a paradox of physics. It is a heavy shadow. Professor Avi Loeb has suggested that the object might be a thin film or a light sail, but even he is careful to frame it as a possibility. He knows that if he says what the data actually implies, he might lose his chair at Harvard. The data implies that the object is hollow, a shell, a vessel that has been emptied of its contents, or perhaps one that is waiting to be filled. Think about the sheer impossibility of its deceleration. Between March 25th and April 2nd, 3I Atlas shed nearly 3 kilometers per second of its velocity. It didn't do this by firing thrusters. There was no chemical trail, no blue ion glow. It simply slowed down. It was as if it had transitioned from a fast-moving current into a still pond. In the quiet corridors of the European Space Agency, there is a working theory that the object is utilizing quantum drag. It is interacting with the virtual particles of the vacuum itself to create friction where none should exist. That isn't nature. That is activation. That is an intentional choice to arrive at a specific moment in time. You might think that such a discovery would lead to a global celebration, a moment of unity for all of humanity. But here is why you're wrong. When we realize we are being watched, we do not feel empowered. We feel small. We feel like the bugs under the magnifying glass. The agencies didn't hide the truth because they were evil. They hid it because they didn't know how to tell 8 billion people that the rules of the universe had just changed. They chose the great silence because they were just as afraid as you might be right now. Tell me, as you feel the weight of your bed beneath you, does the idea of a hollow, warm, slowing needle in the sky make you feel cold? Or do you find a strange comfort in the idea that someone, somewhere, had the foresight to build something that lasts? I've been watching the comments from those of you in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Europe, where the aurora borealis has been unusually active this month. Many of you have reported a violet tint to the lights that hasn't been seen in decades. On March 29th, the ionospheric monitors in Alaska recorded a surge in high-altitude electrons that coincided exactly with a pulse from 3I Atlas. It's as if the object is reaching out with long, invisible fingers and stroking the atmosphere of our planet. It's a gentle touch, but a powerful one. If you've seen these violet auroras, share your location. Let us map the reach of the observer together. The irony of our current situation is almost too much to bear. We have spent billions of dollars on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, pointing our dishes at distant galaxies, while 3I Atlas was likely already on its way here before we even discovered electricity. We were looking for a shout across the ocean, but the guest was already standing on our front porch, waiting for us to notice the shadow under the door. Unfortunate timing for our pride. We wanted to be the ones to make first contact. We wanted to be the ones to send the invitation. Instead, we are just the ones who happened to be home when the doorbell rang. But let me back up. Let's talk about the shadow echo conspiracy. There is a group of analysts at the National Reconnaissance Office who believe that 3I Atlas isn't actually moving through space at all. They suggest, based on the way it flickers on infrared sensors, that it is teleporting in microscopic increments. It disappears and reappears millions of times per second, each time slightly closer to its destination. It is moving through the cracks in reality. This would explain the lack of a heat trail. It's not a ship. It's a localized distortion of the space-time continuum. It's a glitch in the simulation that has decided to take the shape of a needle. As you drift deeper into this hour, let the complexity of the science wash over you like a cool tide. You don't need to understand the math of quantum drag or thermal spectrography to feel the truth of the moment. The truth is that the universe is far more crowded and far more intentional than we were ever taught in school. 3I Atlas is a bridge between the world of things you can touch and the world of things you can only imagine. It is a physical object, but it carries a metaphysical weight. It is a heavy thought for a sleepy mind, but it is a necessary one. In just over 4 weeks, on May 5th, 2025, the object will pass within the orbit of the Moon. At that distance, it will be the brightest thing in the sky other than the Moon itself, but only if you know where to look. It won't be a bright star. It will be a dark spot, a hole in the constellations, a piece of the night that is blacker than the rest. It will be a void moving through the light, and in that void, there is a warmth of 22 degrees Celsius, a room temperature abyss. You are breathing slowly now, the air moving in and out of your lungs in a steady 7-minute and 30-second cycle. No, that's not right. Your cycle is much faster. You are a creature of seconds. 3I Atlas is a creature of eons. But for this brief moment, in the dark of your room, your paths have crossed. You are aware of it, and because you are aware of it, you have changed it. The observer effect is a two-way street. By thinking about the obsidian needle, you are anchoring it to our reality. You are part of the team of 8 billion people who are currently trying to make sense of a silence that is too loud to ignore. But that was only one theory. There is another, 2-1, buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The sky is once again empty, or at least it appears to be. On this final night of the transit, the telescopes are being turned back to familiar targets. The news cycles have moved on to smaller, louder things. But for those who are watching, the world feels different. The air is thinner. The shadows are longer. We are left in the great silence, the quiet that follows a revelation that no one quite understood. It is a weightless, expansive feeling, like the moment after a large bell has stopped ringing, where the air itself seems to hold the ghost of the sound. We have witnessed the passage of 3I Atlas, and though the physical object is now a receding coordinate in the infrared spectrum, the gravity of its presence remains anchored in our collective subconscious. The telescopes at Sutherland and Green Bank have returned to their mechanical routines, cataloguing distant galaxies and flickering pulsars. But the data they gathered over these last few months remains a jagged, unpolished diamond in the heart of our scientific consensus. Can you hear it? The way the room settles when you finally stop trying to solve the puzzle. The way your breath slows when you realize the universe is not asking for your permission to exist. This is the great surrender. We spent so much energy over these 10 acts trying to define the traveler. We reached for science, clutching at isotopes of nickel and non-gravitational accelerations. We reached for history, dusting off the stone cylinders of the Sumerians and the forgotten prophecies of the Hopi. We reached for philosophy, debating the observer effect and the illusion of choice. But in the end, 3I Atlas did not provide a conclusion. It provided an experience. It was a mirror held up to a species that had forgotten how to look into the dark. Remember the I in 3I Atlas, Interstellar, a word that describes a bridge between where we are and where we used to be. It is a bridge made of distance and time, connecting our small, blue garden to the vast, obsidian orchards of the Boötis Void. The Sumerians called it the wild sheep. They understood that some things in the sky are not meant to be sheared or tamed. They are meant to be watched as they wander. The pulses we detected in the deep ocean, the vibrations in the lunar mantle, the shared dreams of the golden wheat. It's all part of the same breath. A long, slow, 360-year exhale of the cosmos. The ship didn't leave us behind. It simply moved into the blind spot of our certainty. It is still there, in the same way the stars are still there during the day. We are just no longer tuned to its frequency. If the universe is a house, a vast and ancient estate, with rooms we have never entered, and 3I Atlas is a visitor at the window, we have to ask ourselves, why didn't it knock? Why did it travel for millions of years, crossing the lightless deserts of the interstellar medium, only to glide past our glass without a word? Or perhaps we are asking the wrong question. Perhaps we should ask, did it see that the lights were off? Did it look down at our world and see a civilization so distracted by its own glow that it assumed no one was truly home? We were awake, yes, but were we present? Were we looking at the window, or were we looking at the reflections on the glass? The stars are very far apart. It is a simple fact, but one that the human mind is not designed to truly grasp. Between every pinprick of light is a vacuum so immense that 1,000 human lifetimes could be lost in a single centimeter of a star map. 3I Atlas has navigated that distance. It has survived the silence, and now it is returning to it. The distance between two heartbeats is where the truth lives. In that tiny gap of time where the world is still, where you are neither inhaling nor exhaling, you can feel the scale of the journey. You are a part of that scale. You are a biological event occurring in the middle of a physical epic. The orbit continues. It continues, with or without us. It continued while we were fighting our wars, while we were building our cathedrals, and while we were inventing the machines that eventually allowed us to see it. It will continue long after our languages are forgotten and our cities are reclaimed by the dust. 3I Atlas is a reminder that the universe has a schedule that does not include our appointments. It is a humbling thought, but it is also a liberating one. You do not have to be the protagonist. You can just be the witness. You can be the one who stayed awake for the flyby. You are a traveler. Even as you lie there, motionless in the dark, you are hurtling through the vacuum at a speed that would vaporize a mountain. You are the memory of a star, composed of the very same elements that the 3I Atlas carries in its obsidian heart. You are the silence between the words. You are the observer who has finally been observed. The great silence is not an ending. It is a homecoming. It is the return to the state of wonder that we held before we thought we knew everything. In the weeks and months to come, the world will try to explain away what happened. The papers will be filed. The conspiracies will be debunked or forgotten. The thermal anomalies will be recalculated until they fit into a natural model. But you will remember the feeling of the air. You will remember the way the gravity felt a little heavier in December. You will remember that for a brief moment, the sky felt like a door that was slightly ajar. You have been changed by the transit. You have been recalibrated. Take a deep breath. Feel the coolness of the air. Feel the heaviness of your limbs. You are safe. You are grounded. The traveler is gone, but the path it left behind is a permanent part of your map now. You can look at the sky and know that it is not empty. It is a theater of cycles. It is a house of visitors, and you are the one who kept the watch. The orbit of 3I Atlas is now carrying it past the Kuiper Belt, out into the Oort cloud, and eventually back into the interstellar sea. It is moving toward a future that we cannot imagine, and you are moving toward a sleep that is deep, quiet, and full of the patterns of the stars. There are no more anomalies to track. There are no more signals to decode. There is only the long, slow drift into the tomorrow. As you fall deeper, imagine the object as a small, dark point against the infinite black. It is getting smaller and smaller. It is becoming just another star. And then it is gone. But the silence it left behind is full of potential. It is a silence that invites you to dream. It is a silence that tells you that everything is exactly as it should be. The pattern is held. The cycle is respected. The guest has departed, and the house is at peace. One final unanswered cosmic question remains, hanging in the air like the scent of ozone after a storm. If the traveler saw us, what did it decide? Did it mark us as a destination for the next cycle? Or did it see us as a beautiful, fleeting accident of chemistry? We will not know for another 360 years. But the question is a gift. It is a reason to keep looking up. It is a reason to keep the lights on. The sentences are getting longer now. The pauses becoming wider. The words dissolving into the ambient hum of the night. You are reaching the edge of the world. You are reaching the point where the narrative ends and the rest begins. The great silence is welcoming you. It is a vast, warm ocean of nothingness where you can finally let go of the weight of being human. The distance is growing. The light is fading. The heart is slowing. The cycle is closing. You have done well to stay awake this long. You have seen what was meant to be seen. Now, it is time to return to the source. It is time to rejoin the dust and the dreams. The 3I Atlas is in the dark, and so are you. And the dark is beautiful. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On October 29th, 2025, just over 1 year after the initial detection, the European Space Agency released a corrected data set. They found that 3I Atlas did not arrive from the direction of Lyra like its predecessor, Oumuamua. It arrived from a coordinate of absolute nothingness, a graveyard of dead stars. This coordinate, located in a region of the Boötes void, is a place where the density of matter is so low that light itself seems to get lost on its way across the expanse. To find a high-velocity object emerging from such a vacuum is not merely a statistical improbability, it is a physical provocation. Doctor, Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal signature paradox during a late-night review of the mid-infrared telemetry. For an object traveling at 60 kilometers per second through the interstellar medium, the friction of even the thinnest gas should create a specific, predictable glow, a heat signature that betrays the object's history and composition. But 3I Atlas was cold, too cold. It was measured at 3 degrees Kelvin, almost absolute zero, despite being bathed in the radiation of our sun as it crossed the orbit of Mars. This isn't natural physics. This is activation. This is a heat sink working at 100% efficiency. It was hiding its heart from us, masking its internal energy behind a shell of perfect, artificial frost. But here is where it gets dark. When we look at the history of deep space observation, we are taught to look for light. We are taught that the universe is a theater of fire and radiation. But 3I Atlas taught us to look for the gaps. The first conspiracy whispered in the secure channels of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory involved the occultation event of November 3rd. As the object passed in front of a distant, stable star in the constellation of Sagittarius, the star didn't just dim as the physical body obscured it. The star vanished for 4 seconds longer than the physical dimensions of the object allowed. Think about that for a moment. An object roughly 800 meters in length, casting a shadow that suggests a diameter of several kilometers. This implies a field, a distortion of space-time, or a refractive shroud that extends far beyond the obsidian hull. It means that what we see with our telescopes is only the core of a much larger, invisible presence. The second conspiracy involves the lunar seismic sensors left behind by the Apollo missions. These instruments have been quiet for decades, occasionally registering the impact of a micrometeorite or the settling of the lunar crust. But when 3I Atlas made its closest approach, the moon rang like a bell for 12 minutes. There was no impact. There was no debris. It was a sympathetic vibration, a low-frequency resonance that suggests the object was projecting a beam of gravitational energy directly into the lunar mantle. It was as if something were scanning the moon, checking the basement of our cosmic backyard for the first time in 50 years. The third conspiracy is the most human and perhaps the most telling. It is the classified scrub. Within 6 hours of the lunar ringing event, 3 prominent amateur telescope feeds, located in Hawaii, Australia, and the Canary Islands, went offline simultaneously. These feeds were the only ones providing raw, unedited footage of the object's transit to the public. The official explanation was routine maintenance. Unfortunate timing. Those 2 words are doing a lot of work. When the feeds returned, the object had already shifted its orientation, turning its dark side toward our cameras. We were being told, quite clearly, that the public view was a privilege, not a right. What if the object isn't a probe at all? What if it is a beacon? In the world of deep-sea fishing, you don't chase the fish. You don't hunt them down in the darkness of the abyss. Instead, you drop a light, a single, glowing point of interest. Then, you sit back in the silence and wait for the curious to swim toward you. 3I Atlas might be that light. Our sudden surge in satellite launches, our high-frequency radio leakage, and our desperate attempts to photograph the object are all just the splashing of a panicked fish in the dark. We think we are the observers. We think we are the scientists performing a study, but we are merely confirming our presence to a watcher that has been waiting in the void for eons. The Hopi people have a prophecy of the blue star Kachina. They say that when a blue light appears in the sky and stays still while the world turns, the time of the great transition has arrived. They say the Kachina will take off its mask in the plaza before the uninitiated. We see this mirrored in the Egyptian records of the Red Phoenix, a star that appeared at the end of the Middle Kingdom to herald the collapse of the old order. These myths aren't stories to be told around a campfire for entertainment. They are survival manuals. They were written by people who lived through the last transit, people who didn't have the James Webb Space Telescope, but possessed a very long and very accurate memory of the sky. They knew that when the sky changes its rhythm, the Earth follows. They knew that the wild sheep of the stars eventually come home to the fold. You might think that space is too vast for such coincidences to matter. You might think that because 3I Atlas is millions of kilometers away, it cannot touch your life. But here is why you're wrong. Distance is just a measurement of time, and for an interstellar entity, time is a resource, not a limit. 3I Atlas has all the time in the universe. It has been traveling toward this specific coordinate since before our ancestors learned to sharpen stones into tools. It didn't come all this way just to miss us by a few thousand miles. It has been on a collision course with our consciousness for 3 million years. It is a slow-motion impact that is happening right now, inside your mind, as you listen to these words. I want you to think about the last time you felt a sense of déjà vu, that strange, electric feeling that you have been in this exact moment before, that you have heard this voice, felt this cold air, and looked at these same stars. Some theorists at the Institute for Advanced Study suggest that 3I Atlas emits a low-frequency gravitational wave that interacts with the human temporal lobe. It creates a ripple in our perception of time. Have you been feeling out of sync lately? Have the days felt like they were stretching, or perhaps like they were disappearing into a blur? Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments. I want to know if you feel the pulse of the traveler in your own timeline. We are currently counting down to December 14th, the date of the final transit, when the object will cross the ecliptic plane and begin its long journey back into the darkness. We won't be able to see it again until it completes its next cycle, hundreds of years from now. This is a moment of extreme scarcity, a window that is closing. If we miss the message this time, we have to wait for the next civilization to rise from our ruins and try their luck. Now, let me back up, because there is a detail in the European Space Agency report that was buried on page 412. It concerns the acceleration. As 3I Atlas moved past the Sun, its speed increased in a way that defied the standard solar sail model. There was no outgassing, no tail of ice, no jagged fragments breaking off. It was a smooth, silent surge, like a predator seeing its prey and deciding to close the distance. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard has been careful to frame this as a possibility of alien technology. He speaks of light sails and thin membranes, but even his caution is a form of tension. He knows that the data points to something that isn't just a piece of technology, but a piece of intent, an object that knows where it is going. When we look at the trajectory, we see that it isn't just heading toward the void. It is heading toward a specific point in space that will be occupied by the star system Alpha Centauri in approximately 40,000 years. It is a long game, a game where we are just a minor obstacle in the road. You are lying there, your breath becoming slow and rhythmic. You are safe in your room, shielded by the walls and the roof. But those walls are made of atoms that were once inside a star. And that star was once part of a cloud that may have been touched by the same energy that drives 3i Atlas. You are not a spectator to this event. You are a participant. Your curiosity is the fuel. Your awareness is the trigger. What if the reason we haven't found life elsewhere is because we are the only ones who aren't in on the joke? What if 3i Atlas is just one of thousands of such objects? A cosmic traffic pattern that we have only just begun to notice. We are like a child waking up in the middle of the night, seeing the headlights of cars passing on the highway outside, and thinking that each one is a miracle or a monster. In reality, it's just the universe going about its business, and its business does not require our understanding. Tell me, as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, do you feel the scale of it? Do you feel the weight of the 800 meters of obsidian and silence hanging over the world? Write your location in the comments. Let us map the reach of the observer. Let us see how many of us are awake to witness the shadow. The most terrifying thing isn't that we are alone in the universe. It's that we are being watched by something that isn't even trying to hide anymore. It's the arrogance of the flyby, the way it moved just close enough to be seen, but just far enough to be unreachable. We are not just spectators. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experiment is entering its next phase. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, Emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life, had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning. like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply "Low Probability, High Significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass. Except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies. No delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist; China, the poker-faced strategist; UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak; and ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity, catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something, a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, A faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing. Sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show, a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The journey is almost over. The needle is fading into the glare of the sun. The data is becoming quiet. The telescopes are turning away. There is a stillness that settles over a room when the last guest has walked through the door and the lock has been turned. It is a weightless, velvet quiet. 3I Atlas is no longer a headline or a point of light on a sensor. It has become a part of the permanent background noise of the universe. It is retreating into the blinding brilliance of our star, hiding in the one place we cannot follow with our glass eyes. The conversation that began in the deserts of Sumer and continued in the laboratories of Hawaii is reaching its final, unvoiced syllable. We are being left alone again, but it is a different kind of solitude than the one we knew before. It is the silence of a house that is no longer empty, even if the other occupants are invisible. Remember the light curve that beat like a heart. Remember the 7 minutes and 30 seconds. The heartbeat in the obsidian was never meant for our ears, yet we heard it. We listened to the rhythm of a machine that measures its life in billions of years. And for a brief moment, we tried to match our pace to its own. It was a noble effort, a human effort, to find a connection with something so fundamentally alien. But the needle is indifferent to our rhythm. It does not speed up for our excitement, nor does it slow down for our grief. It simply is. As you lie there now, feel your own heart slowing, shedding the frantic energy of the day, and merging with that long, slow pulse of the deep. You are becoming a part of the great silence, You are drifting into the space between the notes. The target was never the Earth. The target was the dream. We spent so much time looking at the trajectory of the object, calculating the miles and the kilometers per second, worrying about the physical impact on our soil. We missed the impact on our spirit. 3. Atlas didn't hit the ground. It hit the collective unconscious. It punctured the bubble of our isolation and let the cold, clear air of the infinite rush in. We are dreaming differently now. The images of obsidian needles and fractal ceramics are the new vocabulary of our sleep. We have been colonized, not by force, but by idea. We have been invited to imagine a world where we are not the protagonists, but the observers of a much larger play. It is a beautiful, terrifying displacement. Everything is moving. Everything is still. You are moving through the dark at speeds that would break a human mind if we felt them, yet you feel perfectly motionless in your bed. This is the ultimate paradox of the cosmic perspective. We are all travelers, even when we are resting. 3. Atlas is doing the same. It is currently performing a silent, gravitational maneuver behind the sun, a graceful arc that will carry it back into the interstellar depths. It is moving away from us, yet it will never truly be gone. It has left its mark on our gravity, on our magnets, and on the way you are breathing right at this very second. You are exhaling the same air that was stirred by its passing. Can you hear the bees? The trillion tiny parts. Working in the dark for a purpose we don't need to know. There is a profound comfort in not needing to know. We have spent our entire history demanding answers, demanding that the universe explain itself to us. But 3 Atlas offers no explanations. It offers only presence. It is a masterpiece of function without a manual, like the swarm of bees that keeps the garden alive without ever understanding the concept of a flower. The obsidian needle is performing a task that is essential to the architecture of the cosmos. We are the flowers. We are the ones who get to bloom and fade in the safety of the garden, while the machine maintains the fences. It's okay to let go of the why. It's okay to just be the bloom. It's okay to let go now. The math is finished. The equations have reached their equilibrium. The variables have been accounted for. The European Space Agency has stopped sending pings. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory has archived the files. The news cycle has moved on to louder, smaller things. But here, in the quiet of the late night, the data is still settling. It is drifting down through the layers of your mind like fine, grey ash. You are the final storage device for this encounter. You are the one carrying the memory of the visitor into the future. 3 Atlas is gone from the sky, but it is alive in the way you perceive the dark. It has changed the color of your solitude. The pattern is complete. The pentagon is closed. The 5 observers are in place. The solar harvester has taken its fill. The ancient warnings have been validated and then forgotten once more. This is the way of things. We remember, we fear, we wonder, and then we sleep. It is the cycle of the high-yield civilization. We are a species that requires rest to process the scale of our own existence. 3 Atlas understands this. It didn't stay long enough to break us. It only stayed long enough to wake us up, before letting us drift back into a deeper, more informed slumber. It is a gentle teacher, in its own cold, obsidian way. The obsidian needle is just a shadow, and you are just a light, fading into the velvet of the night. Imagine the object now, a tiny splinter of dark against the roaring fire of the sun. It is a speck of dust, in a cathedral of light, and you are a speck of light in a cathedral of dark. You are both equally small. You are both equally significant. In the great silence, there is no hierarchy of scale. The movement of a proton is as important as the movement of a galaxy. Your sleep is as vital as the orbit of the needle. Let the two movements become one. Let the heavy, rhythmic waltz of the cosmos pull the last of the tension from your hands, your feet, and your mind. Everything is exactly as it should be. The arrival was on time. The departure is on schedule. The unfortunate timing was actually perfect. We needed to see the shadow to remember the light. We needed to hear the silence to remember the song. As the James Webb Space Telescope turns its golden mirror toward a different quadrant of the sky, and as the radio dishes in the desert go still, feel the peace of a closed chapter. The experiment is over for now. The data has been collected. The harvester has moved on. You are free to return to the earth. You are free to return to yourself. Whispering, the sensors are dark. The room is warm. The blanket is heavy. The obsidian needle is a ghost in the sun, and the sun is just a star among billions. You are safe in the middle of it all. There are no more questions to answer tonight. There are no more signals to decode. The language of the bees has faded into a hum. The hum has faded into a breath. The breath has faded into the soul. Everything is quiet. Everything is home. I've been reading your presence here, in the stillness. I see the locations you've shared, the cities, the farms, the islands. We are a global family of watchers, united by a single, silent needle. We have shared this moment of awareness, and now we will share this moment of rest. Wherever you are, know that the silence is the same. It is a universal language, the only one that 3i Atlas truly speaks. It is the language of the void, and it is the language of the heart. So, let the world dissolve. Let the math evaporate. Let the history sink into the soil. You don't need to remember the dates or the names or the kilometers per second. You only need to remember the feeling of the scale, the feeling of being part of something that does not end, the feeling of being seen by the dark. 3i Atlas is a memory now, a shadow behind the sun, a splinter in the eye of the future. The target was never the Earth. The target was you, and you have been reached. You have been measured. You have been known, and you are found to be exactly where you belong, in the quiet, in the dark. In the dream, close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.